Over to you, Dr. Vanitha.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So good evening, everyone. I welcome you all for today's journal club. I'm Dr. Vanitha, second year DNB resident general surgery from Aster CMI Hospital. Today's topic for journal club is on endoscopic thyroid surgeries, initial experience of more than 100 cases from a tertiary care center in India. This paper was published online on 3rd January 2019 in Indian Journal of Surgery. The author for this paper is Gyan Chand et al. And the study was carried out in the Department of Endocrine Surgery, Sanjay Gandhi PG Institute of Medical Sciences, Lucknow, UP. So Kurt Sem, who is a German gynecologist, was the first person to perform the laparoscopic appendicectomy in 1980, which paved the way for various minimal access techniques in various surgical specialties. And endoscopic thyroid surgery is one of such minimal access technique. And first endoscopic thyroid lobectomy was performed by Huscher in 1997. The goal of the endoscopic thyroid surgery is to avoid the visible neck scar without compromising the treatment efficacy. The approaches used in this paper were axillary and breast approach, bilateral axillary and breast approach, and transoral vestibular approach. The aim of this paper is to determine the feasibility of these approaches in Indian patients, as well as to analyze the difficulties encountered and the modifications that were made to overcome these difficulties and to analyze the limitations. The inclusion criteria which were taken initially by the author was euthyroid patients and the patients with size of the thyroid tumors less than or equal to 6 centimeters, and the patients who underwent FNAC with Bethesda category 2, 3, 4. And with increase in their experience, they also included the larger goiters and the toxic glands and low risk malignancies. And this picture shows the Bethesda classification of FNAC for reporting thyroid cytopathology, where first one is the Bethesda category 1, which is of non-diagnostic. Bethesda category 2 is benign with a risk of malignancy varying from 0 to 3%. Category 3 is atypical follicular lesions with risk of malignancy from 5 to 15%. Category 4 is suspicious for follicular neoplasms with risk of malignancy varying from 15 to 30%. And category 5 is suspicious for malignancy with risk of malignancy varying from 60 to 75%. Category 6 is confirmed malignancies with risk varying from 97 to 99%. Even though the exclusion criteria was not mentioned in this paper, they have taken from the previous published papers by experts, stating that they have excluded the patients with history of thyroiditis and the patients with history of previous neck surgeries and with the history of irradiation, patients with history of irradiation and the patients with history of breast lumps. So in this paper, they have clearly mentioned the surgical technique right from the mode of anesthesia. All these surgeries were performed under general anesthesia, and the patient position is in supine position with arm abducted and folded at flexed at elbow joints, and a folded sheet or sandbag is placed under the patient's shoulders so as to extend the head and neck, and the thyroid region is clearly visible. In the first picture, and the patient is prepared from chin to umbilicus. And here in first picture, we can see the skin landmarks as well as port site positions, which were marked prior to surgery with 2 axillary ports in the anterior axillary region and 1 breast port, which is placed in the superomedial aspect of the ipsilateral breast in the superior margin of the alveola. And in the second picture, which depicts the skin landmarks and port positions for bilateral axillary breast approach, where we can see the tangential marks drawn from 4 port positions, 2 anterior axillary ports and 2 breast ports, tangentially drawn towards the midline, towards the hyoid bone, which defines the skin flaps. And the third picture shows the incision made in the lower lip region, and as well as 2 lateral 5 mm incisions will be made lateral to the main 12 mm incision. And this picture shows the port positions in various approaches. And this study includes 106 procedures done in 102 patients in whom total thyroidectomy were around 28 with Bethesda category 234, and total thyroidectomy with central compartment lymph node dissection were done in 3 patients with Bethesda. Actually, here there is a discrepancy, sir. Actually, this is type error, I think. It should be Bethesda 5. It can be clearly seen in next slide, sir. Total thyroidectomy with central compartment and selective lymph node dissection was done in 1 patient with Bethesda category 6, and hemithyroidectomy was performed in 67 patients with Bethesda category 234. And in 4 patients who underwent complete thyroidectomy, FNAC was not done. And there is a lacuna where Bethesda category is not mentioned in one of these patients who underwent hemithyroidectomy with central compartment node dissection. And all of the nodules which are less than 4 centimeters were considered for transoral approach with Bethesda category 2. And in this slide, which I mentioned before, Bethesda category 6 was seen in only 1 patient who underwent bilateral axillary breast approach. And in Bethesda category 5 is 3 patients, out of which 1 patient underwent axillary breast approach and 2 patients underwent bilateral axillary breast approach. And this picture shows the patient's clinical pathological parameters as well as demographic characteristics, where we can see the age of the patient varies from 32 years to 44 years. And the mean tumor size is more in bilaterally axillary breast approach, as well as the duration of goiters is more in bilaterally axillary breast approach, as well as the weight of the glands are more in bilateral axillary breast approach. This study is a prospective analytical study. Sample size, actually the sample size should be 102, sir. Only the procedures are 106. So all the procedures were performed by a single surgeon within the time period of 2014 to 2017. And the outcomes that were analyzed in this paper are perioperative outcomes, the conversion rates and complication rates. The statistics which were used in this paper are for representing demographical and clinico-pathological parameters. They have used descriptive statistics, and for continuous data like age or tumor size, mean tumor size, etc., they have used mean plus standard deviation. And the categorical data was represented by using frequency or percentages. The data analysis was done by a computer software called as SPSS version 18.
Okay. So shall we stop here, Anita?
Yes, sir.
Just go back to the statistics slide. Yeah. So first, postgraduates, they will comment. Otherwise, we'll have to ask questions. Anything, critic? Okay. Dr. Janani, what is continuous data? Dr. Janani is there? Not there. Dr. Saurav?
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Saurav.
Sir, a continuous data is a data that can have n number of values. For example, if a patient, if you are wanting to measure age or temperature, body weight, something like that, it can have any value in that group, sir. So when we so continuous data, they have measured with finding the mean and then seeing the standard deviation in the two groups, sir.
Right. I think
Yes,
that's correct. What is categorical data?
Sir, So categorically is that sir, male, female, that one, sir. Sir, if in the two that can be fixed into two groups or three groups like that. They have fixed values. They cannot have a continuous number of values, sir.
Right, right. Dr. Vanita, you have any comments on
No,
that?
sir.
Correct,
No,
no?
sir.
So what is SPSS, Vanita?
Sir, this I read, I forgot, sir.
Okay.
Software.
Anybody?
Sir, usually while we are performing our studies, the statistician will be using this software. It is a common software that was. So I don't know the detail who developed the company or anything, but they will just put the values and automatically they will find out the mean what the formula. If they just put the formula, automatically the values will come, sir. They do the software does all the calculations, sir.
Yeah, it's an IBM software.
That's
Okay, sir.
statistical
Hello.
package for social sciences. It's
Yes.
called
Okay, sir.
statistical package for social sciences from Chicago.
IBM.
Okay, sir. Okay,
It
sir.
is from
Okay, sir.
IBM.
Yes, Dr. Ravi,
Ah,
recently they have modified it as statistical product and services solutions.
okay.
It can be applicable to anything statistics. Earlier it was only social sciences. No, they have made it slightly change in the name.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Sir, can I ask one question, sir?
yeah. That's
Sir, they had told that a total of 106 patients were taken. Out of this, 102 patients were attempted. Sir, what about the other? Did the procedure fail in that, or they didn't attempt for any reason? So is it? I couldn't find it in the paper, sir, particularly mentioned.
Dr. Vanita.
Sir, actually the patients were 102. The procedures performed were 106, sir, including that central compartment neck node dissection.
And also,
That's what I thought, sir.
revision they have done, no?
Yes, sir. Along with that completion thyroidectomy, everything, sir.
Correct. That's how it has become 106 procedures.
Okay, okay.
Understood, no, Saurav?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now I understood.
Okay. So any...
Sir, can I come, sir?
Yeah. Please, sir.
Yeah. Madam, you told 3 approaches.
Yes, sir.
There is one more approach called as anterior chest approach.
Yes, sir.
You know that?
Sir, actually anterior chest approach.
We'll come to that
Yes,
when we
yes,
will
sir.
discuss about the surgical points. Okay. What
Even
is this Bethesda? This one you told, no?
Bethesda. Yes, sir. For
Bethesda.
FNAC
Bethesda.
classifications.
What
Yes,
is that? What is so? My request to all the DN postgraduates here: whenever a new term comes like this, no, you should know whether he is a scientist or what is the new term. Now you know anything about that? Whatever Bethesda, no? How you are
Bethesda.
spelling it?
Bethesda.
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 What is he? Is he a person or what it is?
Sir, it's
Like
a
that?
place. It's a place in the United States.
Yes.
Very
So
nice.
Very
Vanita,
well
location,
known.
yes.
Very well known cancer hospital.
Vanita, you should
Yes,
know
sir.
this. Okay.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not a person name. You should know that it is a place in USA,
Yes, sir.
Maryland. That is
Maryland.
this one, Maryland. So you
Yes.
should know. All postgraduates should remember whenever a new term comes, no, whether it is a person name, place name, scientist name, like that. We should always look into this one. Who is that person? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let me just ask one question.
Vanita,
Yes, sir.
see, this is a retrospective, paper, case control study. There is hardly any statistics in this. I don't think there is any point in discussing any statistics in this paper. It is just a descriptive paper, retrospective analysis.
That's what
Yes.
actually I wanted to comment that also, because it's not a prospective. See, this is to be classified as a retrospective study, though the data is collected prospectively.
Yes,
So I don't know how they have mentioned it like that, but it's I don't know how they accepted the paper also that way, because it is a retrospective study, and secondly it's an observational study.
Yeah.
Okay, so these 2 points have to be there always. It is not case control or any of the other things.
I was going to say that, you see, I think at best, this can be considered a feasibility study. All right. you're starting a new procedure. 2014, they must be congratulated that they got so many cases. You do 10 or 15 cases to know whether you can do it or not. That is a pilot study or a feasibility study.
Yeah.
Once you have done it, honestly, you're duty bound to have a protocol and follow the protocol. And I was going to say, Vanita, if you were designing this study, you have done 10 or 15 of these cases, and you want to really establish its usefulness in clinical practice.
Yes, sir.
What would you do? You must have a proper prospective study. This is by no means a prospective study, okay, as Sandeep said. So, what would you do? That is a learning point, that teaching point for me here. What would you do at this stage? Once you have done 10 or 15, you wouldn't do 106, you would do 102. You do 10 or 15, you know you can do it. So in 2014 you start, in 2014 end or 2015 beginning, you're the surgeon. What would you do? How would you design that prospective study, true prospective study? That is what you guys have to learn.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you people are doing some statistics for your thesis and all that. Do you use any other software? You know, SPSS is a paid software. Are you used to any other free software which you, as a PG, as postgraduates, you should be aware of that software?
Sir, as if now we know about Lakshmi NH, sir, what Ramakrishna sir has devised.
I don't know about AP. You have heard of AP Info?
No, sir.
I think that's what we used to use. I don't know what you're using nowadays. I don't know. But AP Info is a free software supplied by CDC. So it's available for everyone.
Yes, sir.
A very beautiful software, very easy to use.
Right.
Vanita, if you
Yes,
are not answering Dr. Lakshman's question, I think somebody else should. It's an extremely important question.
Sir,
Because-
first, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, first, after analyzing all the treatment approaches, sir, like
Yeah.
what is feasible in how size of the gland or whatever pre-operative workup and post-operative workup we have to see, sir.
Okay.
And then as if now it should be taken as a pilot study as said by sir.
Yeah.
And we can make a thesis protocol, sir, hypothesis.
No, but what are we going to do?
What are you going to do? What are the points in that protocol that you would include? Just the headings.
So first is objective of the study, sir.
No. See, basically what you have to say is, are you going to do a randomized
Randomized,
trial?
yes.
Are you going to compare standard thyroidectomies to the laparoscopic thyroidectomies to see what is the difference between the two in terms of all the things? But I think the main thing that they have actually not done is, there is no cosmesis score. See, you have to have objective cosmetic score. You can't say patient said, I'm happy with it. But even that, there is a score. So cosmetic score has to be the main, if that is what they are going to show, that patient is happy because there is no scar. You have to show that how did the standard people feel about the cosmesis of their scar, and how did the laparoscopic people feel about the scar and cosmesis appearance of the thing. And then all other things like malignancy, clearance, all these things will come into play, then complications and all those things. But the main thrust of this article has to be cosmesis, because that is what it is trying to achieve anyway.
Yes, sir.
See, they make a sweeping statement that the world over people don't want scars in their necks. They may or may not be right. They may or may not be right as far as Indian population is concerned. For every population, you have to define that.
Yes, sir.
Which means that you must start with a questionnaire. As Ravi pointed out, you must first have two similar groups of thyroid diseases, all right, same size, same pathology, same Bethesda classification, similar groups, one with conventional open surgery and one with your minimally invasive surgery. And on that, prospectively, you must randomize them into these two groups, all right, you must randomize them. And then, what are the points that you look at? You must look at the ease of surgery for the patient. There is a learning for the surgeon. Okay, that you must start from that. There is a learning curve. Initially, it will be difficult, and then you learn. So anyway, that the time taken, complication pattern, What are the two spectra, you know, what are the complications that you have? And very importantly, as Ravi pointed out, whether the patient notice the difference between the two groups. You must have a survey as to what they're feeling about their cosmesis is. You know, for all you know, they may not bother about a scar in the neck.
Yes, sir.
You know, but my guess is that they will. But you must know what their feeling is. You must have data for it. Plus, you must have a cosmetic assessment done by an independent observer. Okay, it looks good when you make these holes, you know, periareolar incision, something in the axilla which you can hardly see. Then you must look at the post-op comfort level of the patients. You know, there's such a large flap raised. They themselves admit ecchymosis is there, subcutaneous, you know, hematoma is there, things like that. What is the patient's view about that? And today, in any study, there must be a quality of life score at specific instances after surgery. QOL score at the end of 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months or 1 year. That is the way you have to design a study, and that will be a prospective study. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So ease of surgery for the patient, for the surgeon, cosmetic score, quality of life score, complication rates. And it must be in these two groups as a prospective study. In the same spectrum, the two groups are equally divided with similar pathology and similar size of thyroid nodes. That is what really gives you a proper objective assessment of a study. I'm convinced that the endoscopic surgery will come out tops. I have no doubt about it, but we have no data for it.
Yes.
And these people had an excellent opportunity to give 50 cases in each group, and they lost it.
See,
That's what I also felt the moment I saw the data, because they lost and they messed up the entire paper. They are not done it. They are not done justice to the data.
Yeah.
See, this paper in 1980s would have been acceptable, not now. I think, and this is coming from Sanjay Gandhi Institute, which is one of premier surgical institute. So it is not acceptable to have a paper like this from there.
Why, Ravi?
Because this is just, we have done 100 cases, this is what has happened. It's ridiculous. You know, they are just, you know, giving statements without actually saying what is the message from this paper at all. You know, the thing is, they should have shown that this, you know, this is definitely better compared to the conventional surgery. These are the points where it is better, and this is why we should do it. What is the size of the tumor at which you should stop? All these messages could have been given.
Sir, one thing can I say, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, if you see in the method, sir, they have not followed a fixed protocol also, sir. Initially, they were saying that they had stuck to Bethesda 2, 3, and 4. However, as our experience increased, we attempted larger lesions. So they had changed the protocol in between the study only, sir.
There is no protocol. There is
Yes,
no,
sir.
there is no protocol. That is the thing.
Yes.
That's right. You're being very kind. There is no protocol.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Case selection has been arbitrary. So this is what we have been always saying, you know, that you must have a protocol and stick to it. And so time and again, various institutions in this country doing very good work. I'm sure he's a very good surgeon, very skilled surgeon, good institution. But unfortunately, we are flawed in the way we collect our data.
Actually, Shivram, you asked the question. This paper, I think they have been very kind to accept it in Indian Journal of Surgery. I'm sure it will not be accepted in any other journal in the world.
Yeah, I think it should have been labeled as a retrospective study, and they should have shared their experience. See, to make a protocol, they have not started as a RCT or anything or a prospective study.
So they didn't need to. Actually, they had for almost 50 in 2 of their arms. And they just had to, in fact, they could have done head-to-head comparison between the two arms of the ABA approach and Baba approach.
Yes,
or
yes.
they could have added another 50, made 3 arms open this one, because I believe, because they have very good numbers, because I know the numbers they do. I know them personally well enough. So they could have easily done a beautiful study with 3 arms and compared the 3 approaches very easily.
Yeah.
In fact, they had enough data. 50 is good number.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good learning point for people who are designing their studies. So any other positives in this or only negatives?
No. I mean,
No, it's very positive. See, I think, having 106 cases is a fantastic number, and with the degree of complications and the good results that they have shown. So as Dr. Lakshman said, they are absolutely skilled surgeons, and it's a good approach. They have done well. It's just that they have to take a bit more time and, put their mind into, producing a proper study. That's all. That is a criticism.
See, their complication rates in terms of recurrent laryngeal damage, permanent damage is less than 1%, 0.9%, which compares well with open surgery. Transient hypocalcemia in about 20%, which is not very high at all. That happens in most series, even in open surgeries. And even though they had a good number, a considerable number with ecchymosis and hematomas under the skin with the flaps, that is a part of the procedure, and it all goes away in 2-3 months. So it's no great concern for the patient either. It's not that they have skin flap necrosis and abscesses and things like that. None of the serious complications. So they have achieved this with very little complication, with good results, even to the extent that they can deal with malignancies with this. And so it's a very good achievement.
Let us see what.
Can I come in, sir?
Yeah, please.
So since it's a retrospective study, they should have told what were the initial difficulties they faced. How did they overcome all those things? They should have told in this paper alone.
They have mentioned it, Srikanth. They have mentioned the problems that they have had, but it's not too many. That's why I was quite impressed with the good work that they're doing. Yeah, it's not too many.
That means they are too experienced, I think.
Yeah.
You do 100 cases, you will be experienced.
That is right. But initial difficulties, what are the learning curve? How difficult compared to lap chole or lap appendix?
Sandeep can probably talk about it. Sandeep.
See, when it comes to, do we allow her to complete the paper, or we can talk about it later?
Yeah, better let her complete the paper, sir. First,
Yeah.
at the end we will discuss.
Okay.
Let her put her critics.
Yes, sir.
Just a clarification, it's not laparoscopic, it's endoscopic.
Yeah.
Sir, actually sample size should come in 4, sir.
Yeah.
This prospective study is highly questionable that's something.
Yes, sir. Retrospective analysis of prospectively maintained database. Yes, sir.
I have one thing about a single surgeon.
Yes, sir.
It has its good points. It means that there is consistency. But what would you consider it? What would be your point for this being against? For it being in the against group.
Multiple surgeons, sir.
No. The point is something that you do must be universally doable.
Yes, sir.
Lack of reproducibility.
Reproducibility is one of the basic requirements of any procedure or any phenomenon or any experiment. And so it is both ways. Single surgeon, you get consistency in data, and if it is not matched by other surgeons, then there is a bit of a negativity attached to it.
All right. Yeah, go on.
Vanita, carry on now, I think. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, when we see the results, it was 106 procedures performed in 102 patients, out of which 82 were women and 20 were men, sir. And the mean tumor size that were mentioned in this paper was about 5.2 plus or minus 1.5, whereas the range is from 2.5 to 11 centimeters. Whereas initially they have told they have taken less than or equal to 5 or 6 centimeters. And with their experience, they have increased the range of the tumor size. And weight of the gland varies for hemithyroidectomy and total thyroidectomy, and the conversion rate is around 8 patients out of 106 patients, out of which 3 patients underwent hemithyroidectomy and 5 patients underwent total thyroidectomy. Out of the 106 patients, 2 patients who underwent axillary breast approach developed biochemical hypocalcemia, and 12 patients who underwent bilateral axillary breast approach underwent bilateral breast approach developed biochemical hypocalcemia, whereas the clinical or symptomatic hypocalcemia is seen in 7 patients out of 106 patients, out of which 1 patient underwent axillary breast approach and 6 patients underwent bilateral axillary breast approach. Permanent calcemia is not observed in any of the patients, and temporary laryngeal nerve, recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy was observed in 4 patients out of the 106 patients, and the permanent recurrent laryngeal nerve was observed in 1 patient. However, they have mentioned like recurrent laryngeal nerve was not identified in 1 case. This is the case that have developed recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy, that is a question mark, sir. And parathyroid glands were identified in all the cases, and 4 out of 4 patients has developed a temporary hoarseness, and 1 patient has developed, as mentioned before, permanent recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy. 7 out of 36 patients developed symptomatic hypocalcemia, out of which 4 patients required calcium infusion for 24 hours. And this picture shows the final histopathology of the tumors, out of which there are few cases in malignant group, where out of which no patients were considered for transoral vestibular approach. There is no permanent hypocalcemia, and the post-op thyroglobulin levels was less than 1 nanogram per ml in all the cases except in 1 patient, and there is an uptake in right level 1B and bilateral lung mets are observed in 1 patient whose thyroglobulin levels was around 21 nanogram per ml. And the reasons of conversion mentioned in this paper were out of 8 patients, 3 patients had inability to secure primary hemorrhage, and in 3 patients they had difficulty to access superior pole of the thyroid, and 2 patients had suspicion of malignancy with extrathyroidal extension.
Right. Anybody? Comments? Postgraduates? Srikanth, you have to mute.
How do you, oh, sorry, sir. I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah. Ask. Now you can unmute.
How do you suspect malignancy in endoscopic thyroidectomy?
Extrathyroidal. Extracapsular, is it?
No, you should the suspicion of malignancy.
Sir.
Yeah,
So one should be lymph node enlargement, sir. There will be
No. See, you're asking, how you would diagnose a case or identify extrathyroid extension.
Or how do you suspect malignancy, thyroid malignancy in endoscopic thyroidectomy?
You don't need to suspect malignancy because
So that's the reason for the conversion, no?
No, that is not the reason for conversion. They have spoken about extrathyroid extension because of which they had to convert. Other cases were some bleeding and all. See, there are times. See, when I do also, when most of the times, wherever there is a suspicious larger growth where I suspect something wrong or something could be there, I get a CT scan done. But in case if we are not getting a CT scan done, there are chances that on table you find the tumor is going into the tracheoesophageal groove or infiltration into trachea, which is very unlikely to happen. In those cases, you have to convert to open because you cannot do that endoscopically or for that matter robotically also. But if infiltration of strap muscles, with experience, you can do it because I do it now. I don't have any problem with strap muscle infiltration. These are the things which you are talking about when you talk about extracapsular or extrathyroid extension, ETS, ETE, what we call.
Sandeep, I wanted a question clarification because majority of their recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, hypocalcemia, all this has happened with the BABA rather than the ABA approach. Is there any particular reason for it, or is it just a statistical quirk?
No, the reason is for parathyroid. The reason is because they have in ABA they have done only hemi as far as I can see. They are not done total, but BABA technique they have done all the total because usually BABA will end up using when we are doing total thyroidectomy.
Also larger glands.
That's what I also.
Larger glands. Maybe larger
No, so
gland.
size of the gland has no relevance to it. See, if your target of doing is only hemi, then you would approach from one side of one areolar incision and 2 incisions in the axilla. She had put the picture that time. So for Hemi, that is more than enough. But when you're doing a total thyroidectomy, you would always go to the opposite side because anyway you need to raise the flap. So you would take opposite breast as well as axillary port because you need a retraction also when you're doing endoscopic. So for that reason, you will have both. But because you are doing total thyroidectomy, your hypocalcemic, parathyroid loss could be higher. Risk of parathyroid loss could be higher in that.
Yeah.
So that is why they have that.
Okay, yeah.
Here, one more problem, if you see in this, they are not mentioned when they had that recurrent laryngeal nerve injury. Is it unilateral, bilateral? Is it so that assessment is very important, which they are totally not mentioned anywhere in the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unilateral, bilateral, the incidence is significantly different and the outcomes are different.
Right. Any other critic? Dr. Lakshman?
Another thing which I find very peculiar is 11 centimeter sized thyroid. Endoscopically, it's really difficult to handle. It is, I don't know if they're talking about the size of the entire thyroid gland or the nodule itself. But 11 is the available space inside the neck to maneuver it is not there. In neck, the restriction is not by the size of the gland. It is the space which is available to you. You can't work around it. Where is the space to really work? So that is where your problem comes.
Gland size is not a factor, Sandeep.
It is.
Gland size, see, in a 11 centimeters, thyroid will be popping out. Yeah. So you need to create a working space. Where is the working space to create?
Right.
So you can't insufflate. Where is the space to insufflate and work around it? That is where the problem comes.
Yeah, that's a very important point. You know, in open surgery, the whole gland pops out, however big it is. But here, there is no place for it to pop out. So working space will be very limited.
Yeah, you won't get any working space if you have to do such larger gland. That's where the restriction it is. Yeah. You can't handle. There is no space to move it. You can't mobilize, turn it around. Nothing can be done.
Yeah.
What is the size usually accepted? Anything?
It's with your
maximum size, sir.
Experience. What I do is I go up to. I have done about 8 centimeters. Also, I have handled. That's what I do. But it is all, see, again, the shape of the patient's neck, the way it appears, whether you think, again, those factors will come into play. It is not just the size. Size to the neck ratio will matter because that's what will decide how much space you have in the neck. Very small neck with a big nodule will be very difficult. So that ratio between the two, there is no measure for it, but then it is literally eyeballing it that, you look at it and think, okay, this is possible for me or this is not. But if you ask me to begin with, nothing more than 4 centimeters should be taken because it will be very difficult to handle. But as you get more comfortable, I think larger sizes are okay, acceptable.
Right. Yes, Dr. Lakshman.
Yeah, I mean, my only critique is that there isn't enough data given for them to justify what they have claimed afterwards. For example, they talk of the cost. The cost, what did it involve? Did it involve the cost of the setup of the place, instruments, staffing? If it's a government institution, the cost of 25,000 rupees, it looks very small, but what does it involve? We need to be a lot more objective in the way you do the calculation, and it must be explained as to how they arrived at that total cost. Similarly, what was their follow-up? Sandeep also mentioned it. In what circumstance did they have the hypocalcemia or the recurrent laryngeal damage? At what time was it detected? When they got better, when did they get better? What it leads me to believe is that there was not even a planned review of these patients. Okay, if you have a planned review, as you should, even without a study, you must have a replanned visit at 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. And then you would have had the data to say at this point this happened. None of the detail is given. And that is something which casts a doubt, or not a doubt, I would say, which limits the usefulness of the data that they have given.
Yes.
Okay. Vanita, carry on. Please read that.
Sir,
You have
yes,
to,
sir.
talk about it, Vanita. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So for I have mentioned like mean tumor size and weight, they have mentioned for each and all the three procedures separately, sir. So on reasons of conversion, they have explained. And three different procedures, three different approaches, they have customized according to the gland sizes, sir. So against what I felt is they have included only few numbers of malignant cases. And there is a long post-operative time and learning curve. And the cost of the surgeries is more when compared to conventional thyroid surgeries. And regarding post-operative pain, bleeding or bruising, anything they didn't mention anywhere in the paper, sir. And they have included low-grade malignancies and toxic glands, but the preparation, what they did for that toxic glands or malignancies preoperative workup, they didn't discuss anywhere, sir. And regarding the recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, what palsy, what we have discussed, sir, whether it is preoperative or after post-operatively they have detected anything, they didn't discuss anything about that, sir. And in the post-operative workup, as scarless surgery, scarless is the main motive here, they didn't discuss anything about keloids, whether any patient has developed a keloids, anything, sir.
My only comment, can I come in?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, three different approaches. I don't think they had defined what approach to which gland or that. There was no definition, Vanita, from what I could gather.
Yes,
It
sir.
was arbitrary. The choice was arbitrary. So I would not say it is for. And in terms of the long operative time and learning curve, it is not against it. You know, it's right. It's going to take a little longer for you to do the procedure. It doesn't matter.
Yes,
As long, because the advantages of good cosmesis, you would spend some more time at it, but I wouldn't call it as a point against it. Learning curve, of course, every procedure will have a learning curve, even that is not against it. The only points which are really, which you have highlighted here, which are very good, is arbitrarily they have included malignant nodules, they have included toxic nodules, and in a properly planned study, such, what shall I say, multiplicity or diversity of cases would not be done. They would classify them into certain specific groups and then study them. Yeah.
yes.
Sir, may I say something, sir?
Yes, Saurav.
Yes, sir. Sir, they had mentioned one line about post-operative pain. There is one line where they have told that there has been significantly higher post-operative pain as compared to conventional thyroidectomy in the first few days of surgery. There is one line mentioned in the paper.
Saurav, you have yourself done studies on this. What would you have to give to say that that statement is justified?
Sir, VAS score we have to measure, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Have
sir.
they mentioned anything about it?
No, sir.
No. So how can you give credence to that statement?
Okay, sir. Okay.
That is the point.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Carry on, Vanita.
Yes, sir. And when we come for discussion, as we have discussed, the evolution for endoscopic thyroidectomy is being the demand of cosmetic surgeons, especially in women who comprises the majority of patients with thyroid tumors. The advantages that were mentioned in this study were short hospital stay, short recovery period, and better cosmesis. Even though they have mentioned it like short hospital stay, the hospital stay when compared to conventional surgeries, it is more in Baba approach, and there is because of extensive dissection and because of long drain output, everything. And the main motive what they have mentioned in this paper is to eliminate or limit neck scar without compromising the treatment efficacy when compared to conventional surgeries. And Paulo, yes, sir.
I think this is a very sweeping and probably unwarranted statement. I don't think any of us who do thyroid surgery have patients staying for more than 1 day, and they never have any major problems in terms of recovery. So I think to say that This, because that can never be the intention of this endoscopic surgery, because the only motive has to be cosmesis. Because I don't think any of the, even for malignancies, majority of the patients go home the same next day or the day after. So in terms of hospital stay and recovery, I don't think the endoscopic surgery can do any better. It can match it, that's all.
I completely agree with sir, because in fact we never see that in fact whenever we counsel the patient also we tell the same thing. There's no difference in the number of days. There's no difference in the recovery time. It is mainly the cosmesis. There's no wound in the neck, that's all. So when we counsel, we always look at the type of patient. You can't have a 60-year-old person coming to you and saying, I want thyroid. Then you have to counsel them and ask them what is the reason. For all you know, she may be an actress, so there is that is justified. But you cannot offer this as a better procedure like lap chole. Lap chole has a defined advantage. That is, here it's only the cosmesis. But there are few things, if you see in this paper also, they have talked about the advantage of the magnification giving the identification of parathyroid gland, which I also have felt when I have performed endoscopic as well as robotic rabbit technique, what I perform. I feel that there is definite advantage when it comes to identification of parathyroid and preservation. That I definitely agree, which you have missed here. You have not mentioned it at all. They have mentioned it in 2 sentences in the paper.
Yes, sir. That I missed.
Right. Okay, carry on. Vanita will finish off and then discuss.
Yes, sir. Paulo Micali has defined the minimally invasive video-assisted thyroidectomy in 1999, which acts as a foundation stone for the development of thyroidectomy. And Koi et al. For the first time has devised the procedure bilateral axillary breast approach. He is from Korea. He has included thyroid glands less than or equal to 2 centimeters with no evidence of metastasis in his study. And there are various techniques available in endoscopic thyroidectomy, which can be broadly classified into cervical approach and extracervical approaches. And in extracervical approaches, there are various nomenclatures called as axillary bilateral breast approach, bilateral axillary breast approach, and transoral video-assisted neck surgery or transoral vestibular approach, and posterior auricular approach. Even though there are no specific guidelines mentioned for a maximum nodule site, most of the publications, it has mentioned it as 4 to 6 centimeters for benign goiters and less than 3 centimeters for low risk papillary thyroid tumors without extrathyroidal extension or lymph node enlargement. In this study, they have recognized it as in benign tumors, the size is the 5.3 plus or minus 1.6 centimeters, whereas the malignant tumors, the size is 4.3 plus or minus 1.1 centimeter, which is comparable to most of the publications. And here we can see the mean gland size and the ranges, and the patients underwent surgery, various types of surgeries. And out of these 3 approaches, they have author has felt a bilateral axillary breast approach as the ergonomic and suitable one for large goiters, even though the learning curve is longer. Han et al. In his experience of 70 cases by axillary breast approach had a mean operative time of 90 minutes with ranging from 60 to 170 minutes, whereas the Koi et al. In his experience of 512 cases by bilateral axillary breast approach had a mean postoperative time of 151.2 plus or minus 3.1 in total thyroidectomy, whereas in hemithyroidectomy it was seen as 141.7 plus or minus 50.1. Anu Wang A in his transoral vestibular approach surgeries had a mean operative time of 115.5 ranging from 70 to 300 minutes. Whereas in this study, the mean operative time for all the 3 approaches were higher when compared to the previous studies. This can be attributed to patients presenting with long-standing large goiters or patients delaying in seeking medical attention. So even the longer mean operative time can be attributed to the large tumor size and equipment failure or logistic issues. And here they did even additional surgeries like central compartment neck dissection or selective neck dissection. And the reason for the long mean postoperative time can be because of those reasons. And the conversion rate mentioned in this paper was around 7.5%. And the hospital stay is more in bilateral axillary breast approach, which can be due to maximum dissection and prolonged drain output. And this slide shows the cost of treatment, which was more in bilateral axillary breast approach when compared to other two approaches. And paresthesia was observed in 5 patients, in 2 patients who underwent axillary breast approach and in 3 patients who underwent bilateral axillary breast approach. And this picture shows the scars at 6 weeks post-operative time, where we can barely see the axillary and the breast scars, as well as in transoral approach. So in this paper, they have concluded it as an endoscopic thyroid surgery is a safe and feasible alternative to conventional surgeries in carefully selected patients with large nodules, as well as with toxic and malignant glands, particularly in patients who are conscious of scar and has a desire of scarless endoscopic thyroid surgeries. Whereas the critique is like they didn't mention, even though in the first aim they have mentioned to analyze the difficulties, modifications and limitations, but in nowhere in the paper they have mentioned about the difficulties faced and the analysis of the difficulties, as well as the limitations and modifications were not commented upon.
So the aim and the conclusion, they are not matching.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Literature.
So literature, according to a systematic review and meta-analysis of the patients who underwent endoscopic thyroidectomy as well as open surgeries, it has been concluded according to Kong Chel et al. That in regard of operation and drainage time, as well as amount of drain fluid, hospital stay, and transient recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy, endoscopic thyroidectomy is not superior to open thyroid surgeries, whereas it is comparable in terms of lymph node retrievement and permanent complications. And spelling mistake. Recurrence rates were similar in both of the both types of surgeries, whereas the level of surgical completeness in endoscopic thyroidectomy is not as good as in open thyroidectomy. Thank you, sir.
Right. Open for discussion.
Sir, can I ask to Dr. Sandeep?
Yes, sir.
Where do you keep the drain? How?
I didn't get your question. Sorry.
After the endoscopic thyroidectomy, sir.
Yeah.
Where do you keep the drain?
We keep it through one of the auxiliary port sites. The 5 mm port site is the best way to keep the drain.
And when you will remove, sir, as soon as the fluid is coming less or something like that, depends.
Generally, see, initially I was removing it when the drainage was less, but nowadays I don't keep it more than maximum 48 hours. Because the thing is, the space is more and you're not closing the midline. So only purpose in thyroid to keep a drain is to watch for bleeding. That is our classical teaching, and that's what I would prefer to do. Initially, I used to keep it for longer because I saw more drain was coming, but nowadays we pull it out. Even if it's 100 ml, we pull it out.
So after removing the drain, sir, say there is hypothetical question. If you feel that again there is a collection, say on 4th or 5th day, if the patient comes with a swelling in the neck, what we are supposed to do? You definitely feel that there is a collection.
Usually nothing is required, but one odd case, maybe one case till now I have had to aspirate. But I think that was not just thyroidectomy, it was with neck lymph node dissection which we had done. I don't think it was, that is the only case I remember where we had to put a needle and aspirate. It was supraclavicular fossa, not even central. Central compartment, I have never faced any collection that needed any needle or anything. didn't have to aspirate.
And Dr. Puntambekar from Pune, sir, we were to attend his workshop. That's what anterior chest approach I was talking to you. He used this a 0-degree telescope just 10 centimeter below the sternum and 5 mm below the clavicle. But that is very, this one is a limited, he demonstrated in Cochin conference also, this method. But the audience was not happy in the sense the way the plane was created, and he was also struggling during this section. So reproducibility, that's what the word was coined. If you are, if we can take it further, and because learning curve is very high, hardly here and there we are seeing people coming with endoscopic thyroidectomy. We are rather afraid also to go for, because open this one we are all trained. This endoscopic somehow it is not getting up. So what do you feel, sir?
See, it requires you to do at least about 10 to 15 cases before you become very comfortable with what you see. And whereas when you do robotic, it may be about little less, maybe 8-9 cases. In my personal opinion, it takes about 10 to 15 cases for endoscopic thyroid. So because the handling is different, the approach is different. So plane creation, and you need to stick to one approach till you become comfortable. You can't switch between approaches and then think you will become perfect. One transvestibular, one transaxillary. You cannot do that. You have to stick to one approach. Try to perfect it unless you find something new, and you can modify it according to your convenience. Because I don't do exact Baba when I do. I do slightly vary. In fact, I don't do that ABBA technique at all. Very often I put 2 areolar incisions and do a good triangulation and I operate. I don't, in fact, the standard Baba, what they say is, use the camera on the opposite, areolar port, which I don't do. I prefer to use full triangulation and operate. It's easier for me. So there are many things which,
and you use any clips, or you do only fully with a harmonic, or you use 5 mm clips for the vessel ligature or something like that?
No clips at all.
Full harmonic.
Yes, I use mainly LigaSure. Harmonic also is okay. I have both I have used, but there's nothing required. Most of these vessels can be handled without any. In robotic, when I do, I don't even use. I use only bipolar and the scissors. There's absolutely no ligature of anything. Nothing comes inside.
And in this paper only we heard that clearance for malignancy is concerned, it is better with open this one compared to this one. To how to convince the patients, sir, then?
See, for malignancies, as of now, I offer them most of the times if I suspect malignancy, and if it is clear-cut lymph nodes are there, central compartment has to be done, I do robotic. When the patients come to me, it is only robotic. My rabbit technique, what I have developed over the time, that's what I offer them. I don't offer them endoscopic because there are some limitations in endoscopic because you are going from lateral. You don't have a midline approach. So when you're going from lateral, it's very good to look at recurrent nerve. You can look at the parathyroids very well, but the absolute central compartment, the Delphian group of nodes are very difficult to clear. It's impossible to clear it because it will go in the upper flap. So you will not get a good clearance in that area. So if I need to do that, I need to really go bang midline like open surgery, which is done by the rabbit technique. It is right, just like open surgery, split open, go in the center, finish the surgery. So that's what I prefer. No endoscopic thyroidectomy for open, these ones. Confirmed large nodules with, central compartment lymph nodes or bilateral neck nodes, I don't offer endoscopic.
Anytime there will be any thermal injury to the skin, sir, when we are operating inadvertently?
No, because see, only place where the skin comes very close is in the midline because there is no platysma there.
Correct.
Okay, so that is the only place. But in thyroidectomy, the flap is raised below the investing layer of neck fascia when
Deep
we raise.
fascia.
Yeah, unlike the subplatysmal flap, which we have learned when we do open surgery, raise the flap in the subplatysmal plane, we always raise it below the deep fascia. So you have the platysma, you have the deep fascia of the neck, then you are dissecting under it. So you are usually safe. So both the sternomastoids will be lying bare in front of you there when you're doing this. So you have good amount of soft tissue cover between skin and this one. I have never had any thermal injury at all in thyroid.
And you were comfortable with robotics. How you are comfortable with robotics compared to endoscopic, sir?
Robotics is just like open surgery. The way approach, in fact, it is much easier than open surgery in rabbit technique, what I do, which I have developed. So in this technique.
What is the technique, sir?
Rabbit, R-A-B-I-T, rabbit.
Long form?
It's robotic assisted breast axillo insufflation thyroidectomy. Insufflation, because most of the people don't use carbon dioxide. So this technique which I developed we use carbon dioxide just like endoscopic. It's just a migration of endoscopic thyroidectomy to robotics. So in this, there is no, it is just like open surgery. There is no much of a difference once you develop this plane and start operating.
So you can
please send the links of videos, sir.
YouTube. It's available. Just Google it.
YouTube. Okay, sir.
Sandeep, have you done cosmetic analysis of these patients? And second, have you had any problems in terms of having keloid formation or anything?
Yes, see, keloid formation in this, usually our Indian skin is quite keloidogenic, and lower down we go more problems.
Yeah.
So I have had a few patients with hypertrophic scars in the axilla. At least exact data I don't remember. At least around 15% of the patients develop hypertrophic scars. Darker the skin, more likely that they will develop. I have had fair skinned people also developing it. But overall, the scar healing and everything is good. There's no problem with that. Okay. But yes, keloid, not exactly keloid, hypertrophic scars.
Thank you, Sandeep. It was nice of you to join us and enlighten so many things. Dr. Ramakrishna, you didn't say anything?
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah. Now, first of all, I was looking at the title. They call it endoscopic surgery. I think better term would be minimal access surgery. And there is nothing endoscopic here. Endoscopy usually indicates you are going through the lumen. But here it is more appropriate term would have been minimal access surgery. And one typo error I found in the initial reading, they mentioned they have injected diluted epinephrine plus adrenaline. Actually, epinephrine and adrenaline both are the same. There is nothing like epinephrine plus adrenaline. Even reviewer have missed it, and somehow it has published with that. And because it is an observational study, and there is nothing much to critique. But the problem is we are telling about the comparison. These two, ABBA and BABA, these two techniques cannot be compared, even if they want to, because the indications are different. They are telling it is for larger nodules, this is for smaller nodules. Then indications are different. We can't really compare these two techniques. At the most, we could have what they are trying to tell is the only advantage is it will avoid a scar in the neck. So if it is the result wise, complication wise, if it is not inferior to open surgery, then this is a better approach. That is one thing. And Dr. Lakshman was telling single surgeon, reproducibility. See, most of the newer procedures, it will be like this only in the initial period. Probably when more and more people start adopting it, they may get used to it and it becomes reproducible. So right now, the idea is to see that this particular procedure is feasible, it can be done, and it has got equally good result as open surgery. That's all they wanted to tell. But as you say, the comparison is not there. They could have compared it with open surgery. That would have been better thing, because these three techniques cannot be compared with each other, because indications are different for each of these. They cannot be compared. It could have been compared with open surgery. That is a better thing. And in the conclusion, what I was expecting out of this paper is they would have given specific recommendations when to use what approach. That recommendation I was expecting in this paper after going through that lengthy discussion, but that is lacking here. That's the main lacking here.
Right, right. Dr. Sandeep, you want to say anything about endoscopic versus minimal access neck surgery? Or
This is endoscopic thyroid surgery only, because endoscopic generally, whenever we say it, anything where a scope is used is endoscopic. Whether it is an endoscope, what we do gastroesophagoscopy, or any form of endoscopy. So that is all considered under one group only. We are calling it differently based on which area we are using it. So, and this cannot be classified as minimally invasive. The presently used terminology for this is remote access thyroidectomy.
Right.
Because it is maximally invasive.
Yes. So
Yeah,
we have become very safe. We call it remote access. Basically, you are taking
minimal access, sir. I'm not telling minimally invasive. It is minimal access surgery.
Yeah, that is also acceptable. I think that terminology is also good enough.
Minimally access, minimal access, and maximally invasive. That's what author also has mentioned in that.
Okay.
Yeah. And other very important thing, I think the pain and the paresthesia which occurs, in open surgery, it is over the neck. In this, it is usually lower down over the around the manubrium sterni. So that also they are mentioned in the paper, and that is correct also. That we also see that very often.
Right. So final comments by Dr. Lakshman.
One of the things is, I think this is an interesting technique, and I think more and more people will take it up. And I think it's right that we take it up, because those who want to avoid a scar, I think it's a good alternative. Coming back to the information in this paper, I have 3 comments. There is no clear thought process in which of these 3 methods to use for what kind of a tumor, of an audio. So we can't take any message about where you use ABA, where you use BABA, and where you use the transoral approach. That information is simply not there, because it's all arbitrary. And in terms of writing the paper, this is for the postgraduates. The discussion in the end must have a 2 or 3 lines about the limitations of the study. Okay, there is no such classical description here. They have to say, these are the limitations of my study. It's always good to include that. And this last bit is to give future directions. So if I were writing this paper, I would have written the limitations about not having a protocol and not having a systematized measurement of pain and all that, but we are looking at the feasibility. And then next, I would say what I said earlier, that I would design a study which would compare this with open surgery, for example, and try and get a randomization and get proper data. That kind of, for those of you who want to write papers, it's always good to talk about your limitations and future directions. That's what they call it, future directions for studies in the given field. That should be included. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
much. One last question, sir, for Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep is there, sir?
Yeah, he's there. Go on.
Okay. Same approach is used for breast lumps also, by axillary going behind and taking the breast lumps?
See, for breast lumps, there are no endoscopic surgeries for breast lumps. That is not done because it doesn't make any impact. But yes, in minimally invasive breast surgeries, what they call it, the term exists. But what they do is, the incisions are placed in cosmetic areas. We can always do, infra-mammary crease incision or axillary incisions based on which location the tumor or the lump is located, or circumareolar. Those things are possible. But for mastectomy and this one, there are techniques which are available, which are like, robotic mastectomy is available, which can be done with free flap reconstruction, which can be done. So these techniques are like, very few patients really need it. And in fact, most of the centers which do like, MSKCC in US and all that, they tried it out. MD Anderson actually, they tried out. But I think, most of us have not ended up using it much. Everywhere they have tried a few cases, and then we didn't find it really worth doing it because there's no such utility for it. But one place where we are using it is, to reconstruction, LD flap raising, latissimus dorsi flap raising. If it is only the muscle tissue which is required and not the skin paddle and larger this one, it is possible to use minimally invasive. That you can do even with endoscopic, flap raising. You can completely free it because a lot of space. You can just create a pneumo over there and dissect the entire latissimus dorsi and get it up and use it for breast. That is possible. That is done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think we had very interesting discussion. Thank you, Anita. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Nice of you to join us.
Thank you very much, sir, for having me.